Hey everyone, this is Lulu with As You Wish Pottery, and in this video we'll be painting this super cool tiger arch face. As always, all of our supplies will be listed on the lesson plan, so make sure to grab that before we get started. Alright, so to begin, we're going to use the large square brush to paint the vase with 1 to 2 messy coats of Hint-O-Mint. So for this part, I'm just going to go in and paint everything with one coat and then go through everything one more time and just kind of fill in any spaces that I've left, and make sure that you paint the edges of the vase as well. Once you're done, you're going to use a toothbrush or any round brush to splatter the vase with double mint. And remember to splatter, all you gotta do is dip the brush in paint and just kind of flick the bristles with your finger, and that'll splatter the paint onto the piece. Now I'm going to set the piece aside to dry, and while the piece dries, I'm going to trace over the image onto tissue paper. And to trace, all you gotta do is place the tissue sheet on top of the printed image and just follow along the lines using a pencil. Alright, so once you're done tracing, you're going to place the tissue sheet over the front side of the vase, and you're going to retrace the lines using a marker. For the sample, I chose to do the side with the hole facing left, so that way when the flowers are added to the vase, they can complement the tiger or the image and not hide it. Because, we want to show off our work. Now you can use any detail brush, short or long, to paint the monstera leaves that are going to be on the lower left corner underneath the tiger. And these ones we're going to use double mint to paint them. And just keep in mind, all I'm doing is kind of filling in the shapes as I see fit. I do leave a little bit of holes in some areas just to give it that little monstera leaf, like it's ripping kind of thing, but that's totally up to you. That's just creative freedom and things like that. Now you can use a small brush or a detail brush to paint some of those blobby puddle flowers with 2 coats of water yolk. Feel free to use the sample as guide or choose any of the flowers that you want to paint. Try to leave a little gap right in the edge of the flowers, just because we're going to be using another color to paint those later on. Okay, so this part is totally optional, but if you want to do something on the other side of the vase, what we did on the samples was that we created 3 little circles, and then we added leaves that kind of look the same as the flowers and leaves on the other side, the ones that are around the tiger. And then I just used my pencil to kind of sketch those out and kind of plan them out, but you can really do whatever you like here. And then I'm just going to use another small round brush, and I'm going to paint the center of that of one of the flowers, whichever you want to use. You don't have to do the same one I do. I just chose to do this one. I also want to note that my paint is really kind of translucent right now, and it's kind of a cold day here today, so my paint is taking a little bit of time to dry. So as you see, I'm always going to paint 1 coat of something, move on to a next step, and then just go back and add another coat on top of that, so just to make sure that I'm doing nice solid 2 coats. Now I'm going to use the detail brush to paint some of the long leaves around the tiger and around the flowers on the back side of the vase with 1 to 2 coats of Lime Ricky. In the sample, I painted every other leaf with this color, and since I'm going to have another color to paint the other ones, so as you see, I'm not painting all of them in a row. I'm just doing one, skipping another, and then going on until I go all around all the leaves on the front that I want to paint with this Lime Ricky. Then I'm going to turn around my vase, and I'm going to paint the other side. And just remember that because we're using the detail brush, 1 to 2 passings is enough. You don't need to go over it and do another coat. Now you can rinse off the detail brush or use another detail brush, and with it paint the rest of the leaves on the front and the back of the vase with 1 to 2 coats of Kermit. So I'm doing them the same way. I typically just go heavier on the starting point of the leaf, and then I just kind of drag my brush upwards or downwards, whichever direction I'm trying to go, just to ensure that I have some really nice thick to thin lines, and I can always meet the end of the leaf with a point. So for this next step, you can use the small round brush or the short detail brush to paint the rest of the blobby flowers on the front side of the vase with 1 to 2 coats of Rockin' Red. So for the front side, I'm just using the short detail brush, just so that way I can control the shapes a little bit better. And since for these flowers you don't have to worry about the border, it's just nice to keep them nice and tight. And then on the back side, I'm just going to outline the shapes with the short detail brush, and then I'll switch to a small or medium round brush to paint the rest of the flowers with 1 to 2 coats of the same color. Here's a little close-up of everything that we've done so far. Next, you can use Q-tips or the backside of a pencil to paint a few dots around the tiger's image and around the flowers on the backside of the vase with Tweety Bird. So for these ones, just remember to press on and just kind of wiggle the pencil or the Q-tip up so that way the circle becomes a little bit larger and not as tight and compact. So using a small or a short detail brush, you can paint the border around the yellow flowers with 1 to 2 coats of pumpkin pie. So this is just to control the blob a little bit, to give it a little bit more dimension, and to add a little bit more color to the piece. So for this next part, we're going to use the small brush to paint the center of all the red flowers with Simply Cinnamon. So for this part, we're creating a smaller blob on the inside that kind of has a little bit more shape. It doesn't have to look perfectly like a flower, it's just as best as you can make it. Now we're going to rinse off our detail brush, and with it we're going to paint the tiger's head and the right side of its body, and we're also going to be creating that S shape in its back with 2 coats of orange peel. So something I wanted to talk about here real quick is how my paint is a little bit more watery than it should be, and that is because it's a cold day and so paint is separating and things like that. So just know that if this happens to you and you are having trouble like getting the paint to like layer down as it should, all you got to do is just start off with creating a new pocket of paint. Maybe you just got the top paint that is still kind of separating and weird. Shake that bottle up really well and then pour some new paint down, or just let it dry really well and then go back in and give it another coat. Alrighty, so after I gave my vase a couple minutes to dry, I went in and did another coat of the orange peel. Now I'm going to move on to the next step, which is using the small brush to paint the left side of the tiger and the tail with 1 to 2 coats of orange crush. I think for this part I'm doing more like 2 coats. I just want to make sure that the oranges are really bright and colorful. Now I'm going to switch to the detail brush, and with it I'm going to add a few darker shadows to the tiger's ear. I'm going to add a shadow underneath the tiger's nose and chin, the right side of his body, and also over the eye that faces us. I'm still using orange crush, and this is just to add a little bit of elevation to the tiger, kind of give it some more detail. Alrighty, so now we're going to get to the fun part. So we're going to use the detail brush to outline the petals over the puddle flowers. We're also going to outline the vines over the leaves and add little stars over the Tweety dots with Black Lab. I started on the back side first, so that way it would be easier, and letting the front side dry a little bit. And then for the flowers, I just started with a small circle in the middle, and then I added 3 petals that connect to the center circle. Then I continued adding petals that connect to the last row of petals till there is no more space to add any more petals. So as you see, I'm kind of going heavy-handed, but you're more than welcome to start off your lines thinner and then thicken them up as you go. I just make sure that my paint or that my brush isn't too overloaded with paint, so that way I can control how my lines look and things like that, and I never have to worry about globs or anything like that, just because I'm not overloading my brush. Once you're done with all your flowers and things like that, you can move on to adding your vines. And for the vines, I just kind of did the same concept where I just threw a line down, and then I just added little curly cues or swoopies that kind of connect to the center line, and that's it for the vines. And then for the stars, I just created a little bit of an asterisk, just making sure that your brush is never too heavy loaded, so that way you can control the paint that you have going on and that you can move it comfortably. Also remember to rotate your piece around and to always try to reach the easiest part first, so that way you don't have to touch anything that's wet. Alrighty, so once you're done with the back side, you're going to switch to the front side of the vase, and with the detail brush, you're going to outline the tiger, add its stripes, the eye whiskers, and the mouth, then outline the flowers and leaves as we did on the back side, all with Black Lab. you're more than welcome to use the sample as guide, or feel free to use a pencil to sketch your lines and things like that before you get started. So as you see here, I kind of had a little accident that happened. I do not know what happened when I was trying to paint the tiger's mouth. So for this part, I scraped off with the back of my brush with an angled brush. I just scraped it off, and then I just retouched the spot with a little bit more paint. This just ensuring that I let that dry before I try to do anything else on top. So if you ever have any issues like that or anything that happens, just feel free to scrape it off or let it dry and scrape it off. I should have waited a little bit, and I didn't. I kind of panicked, you know, that kind of thing, but it's totally okay. You just have to make sure that you let things dry after you scrape off, and then you add a little bit more paint to touch them back up, and then keep going, keep working around things. And if there's anything you don't like I said, you can always just scrape them off. Just give them time to dry so that way you don't take off too much paint. So here I'm just going to keep going, outlining and detailing things like that. Keep in mind though that for this part, you're more than welcome to kind of create your own and make it your own. It doesn't have to look exactly like mine or anything like that. Just have fun with it, okay? And then remember, you can always do some thinner lines and then thicken up as you go. Anything you don't like, you can just always thicken it up and fix it that way. This is my biggest trick when it comes to making my lines look good. I just thicken things up. After I make them the first time, you know, after I set them down, I go in and I just add a little bit more paint and make them look real nice and juicy, and that's it. That's how I fix things. Then apart from that, we're just going to be outlining and detailing. So all of this is just pretty much adding just extra accents and things like that. Remember not to overload your brush, so that way you can have really nice control over everything. And when it comes to the flowers and the leaves, I did them the exact same way I did the backside. The backside where it was just a little bit larger, so it allowed me to have a little bit more room. So just keep in mind that you want to make things just kind of the same way, just maybe less lines and less things like that, so that way it's not just black and it doesn't just completely take over. Alrighty, so here's a little close-up of the vase that we painted in this video. I'm also going to include the fired version so you can see how all the colors will brighten up and everything will look just as good or even better. Thank you so much for painting with me today. Have a great one. Bye-bye.